Okay, so we're live and we're here tonight to start off our first board policy committee. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a flag salute with Director DeHart leading the way. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, thank you, thank you. So this is first for two of the directors here tonight, and then Director DeHart and I, we've been together for a year on this committee. This committee in this process isn't nearly as formal as it is when we have our regular board meetings. And so there's the conversation, the dialogue's much more free. We do have an agenda. We should try to stick to that agenda as best as we can. But again, this is a subcommittee as the board as a whole. We would make recommendations based off of the policies presented here, and we bring it up to the next board meeting for a first reading. And typically what that looks like is that we'll go through, we'll make adjustments as we see fit, and then we push it forward to the next meeting for a first reading. Typically those are not read aloud, but with a new board, may have a new process. Who knows? But we would push that forward. I would take the edits out. So for example, here you see some bracketed language, or you say some language that's highlighted in gray, and that would be taken out. But based off of what we decide here tonight would be our recommendation. And then typically it's a 2-read process. So the board gets a chance, goes into the packet, general public gets to see it. And so typically between our board meetings, they're about 2 weeks apart. People can come in, or 4 weeks apart, they can come in, or they can share online, say, hey, this, that, or the other. And then you bring forward to a second reading, and then typically they're passed. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. That's why I said typically, ordinarily. This could be where we sit here tonight and we're like, we want more review on all these policies. Okay. And then you'll say to me, I want you to go back. Can you contact OSBA? Can you contact their policy attorneys? I'd like to know a little bit more about this, and this. Well, within your right to do that. So anyway, just a general overview on that. On the agenda, additions or deletions to the agenda. One thing I did not put on this agenda, and my recommendation is that we add the discussion and take action if we need to on deciding whether or not we want to chair for this policy committee. So I'm going to be quiet, and you guys can let me know how you want to proceed.
What's a chair do for this small of a committee?
Well, I think for something like this, let's say, for example, we take a look at our first policy tonight, and you say, I want this, this, and this. And so then I'll go back and I'll capture that. I'll push it back to the chair and say, did I capture what the committee is saying true and correct? And so basically it's just a point of contact that I can make sure that whatever it is that I'm understanding you correctly. And then we just push it forward. So the obligations or the requirements are pretty nominal.
Any thoughts, gentlemen?
I don't think it's really necessary, but somebody wants to take on that role. What about scheduling additional meetings? I think Tabitha is just going to do that for us, right?
Yeah. So again, if we decide here tonight, we need to get together tomorrow night for a follow-up committee meeting. Yeah, she's the board secretary. And so we run those meetings through her. That's only an example, not saying we are or we are not.
I mean, I would think that between the three of us, chair's not necessary. We could just,
Yeah, and I think
Not
your
roll.
example, you can just push it out to all of us.
if that works.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So enough discussion about that. Perfect. All right. So moving right along. So now we've got a series of policies that are before you. Before I jump into that, in the packet yourself, at the back of the packet, this is information, which is the guidelines. So when you're looking at a new policy as an example, is it not way in the back of your packet?
Like last page back?
Yeah.
Blue.
Yes.
Okay. It's before the Bill of Rights stuff.
Okay. That is.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Nope, no,
Okay, so this is the basic outline for you, and this is the basic guidance, and I'm not going to read through this verbatim, but for those of that are watching online. So when we get a new policy that comes from OSBA, these are quarterly updates. And I talked to you earlier on and I said, you know, you could anticipate 20, 30, 40 changes coming out of the legislative session. We only have 6 policies here before us tonight. So we may get some more here for the second quarter, or we may not, just depending on how OSBA interprets what the legislature's decided as far as how the laws have changed, which then affects our policies and then how we run our school districts and our schools. So in this policy update, it says, for example, when looking at policies, remember grade area is added language coming from OSBA. OSBA's began using brackets as well. And you see it's kind of a fancier bracket there. And that language that's within that fancier bracket is not to be typically added to the policy. So the gray language is legal language coming out of the legislature. And so then they're going to break it down to common language for lay people such as you and I, as opposed to legislative speak or more of a formal legal speak. If you take a look at, say, for example, policy BD/BDA, which is the first one, it says board meetings. Right underneath it, you see that fancy bracket. And so you see some information there coming from OSBA. You know, with that fancy bracket, like I just read to you, they recommend that you take that off before you push it forward. Okay, so you go back through that. If you take a look on the same policy, for example, at the end of the 3rd paragraph, you're going to see some bracketed language. That's language that's going to give you flexibility, and I can point it out to you here as well. That's where you've got the flexibility as a committee and as a board to make adjustments to the language. And so the bracketed language is here at the bottom of this 3rd paragraph. So also in this, I said, okay, here are our policies. You see some are optional, some are highly recommended, and some are required. Obviously, the required is per law. You need to have this in place. Highly recommended is it's a really good idea. Optional, you can add it or don't add it. Oftentimes, I don't even push the optional policies forward to you if we don't have them in place. Now, this committee may say, you know what, I want to see them all and I want to make that decision. That's fine too. So in this case, you can see right away, we've got 2 policies that are both listed as optional. Because they are already in our existing policies, I feel that we need to keep those current and keep those updated. So that's why you're going to see optional policies that will push through from time to time. Here's another one. If you go a couple more down, there's a new policy in here that is also optional. It's referring to the hiring of retired staff. As we deal with shortages in staffing, this is an optional policy. Districts can or do not have to rehire folks that are retired, but because I'm seeing more and more of that throughout the state, and because of the demands of filling the open positions, this is becoming more and more critical. So I decided to push that forward. But again, this committee can say, you know what, we don't need it. Thank you, Scott. Have a good evening. So again, the optionals simply means that's optionals. So I can offer you opinions up front. I can stay quiet. Typically, you see me in a regular board meeting. I just speak unless spoken to. And so if you guys have thoughts and opinions, I can keep mine out or interject whenever you want me to interject. So lots of information there, but that's the basic overview to what policies look like and what these various symbols mean on these pages.
Sorry, Scott, you're saying that normally an optional policy wouldn't be presented to us unless we have already adopted. Is that what I heard you say?
Or if I see that we have an existing issue in the district. So for example, this district has been hiring back staff that is retired, but we don't have a policy in place. So it seems to me to give direction for the superintendent and myself out of the HR side of things, it will make us consistent and reduce our liability.
So for example, the first one we're going to go over is board.
Yes, BD/BDA. And
That one
that is
I don't see an adopted on here. Is that?
No, that's because what you're looking at the top of your policy, you see where it says OSBA model sample policy. That is their latest edition.
Okay.
Okay. We also have it on file. And so that's why you'll see on this sheet where I said this is a new policy. That means I don't have anything in place. And if it doesn't have anything after it, that means we do have something in place. So for example, under this first policy of BDA, I do have the old copy with me in case you wanted to see it. And if I send this out to you ahead of time and you're curious, you can get online and you can see the policy as well. So what I do then, as I've read through this old policy and I'm looking at the new policy, that's how I form my decision. What have our past practices have been? Have they been working pretty good? And then can it tie into the new one? So that's my thought process. Sometimes it's totally random. Sometimes there isn't any old guidance and it's, well, I like this, or no, I don't. But again, that's for you as a committee to decide, and then I will put forward whatever we decide. So in this particular case, you will see our existing policies will say Newburgh 29J across the top. Okay, right now, this is a sample policy and only an example.
And part of the reason I asked that is because in the past you provided both. I don't think we need to kill them for trees.
Yeah, so I don't know
People
how,
can look that up, but
I don't know how this committee wanted to go forward, so I
Yeah,
decided.
my question would be, outside of the grade language, is that essentially our policy? Is it verbatim our policy? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. So here's where it gets tricky. We have this policy here. We have this policy here.
Yeah.
This is the new, this is the old. But if you even take a quick glance, they don't look the same.
Yeah.
So what happened? Maybe this was adopted 5 sessions ago. And we just haven't kept up because we've been happy as a district with this optional process. But now here we are, different guy in charge, and like, you know what, my preference is that we have policies. Let's keep them as current as possible. So no, you're not going to see verbatim. You're not going to see them match up per se.
And so then my last question would be, if we let's say advance this to the board and say we want to pass this, we pass this, it would be past the language that's here in the sample policy.
Yes,
not
and whatever
just adding
edits,
into-
and whatever edits that we come
Yeah.
up with, yes.
But it wouldn't just be like, we're gonna add in these grade parts to our existing and make it fit.
No.
This
That's what I
would
wanna know.
replace.
Yes,
Great.
yes. Great question. Great question. Yeah.
and so how do you want to do this? Do you just want to ask if there's any changes or any questions on the policy? And if not, we just move it.
I will follow y'all's lead.
I mean, the biggest update there in the first page makes a lot of sense that when we go do something, that it's clear that that's not counting as a board meeting. If we go to ADEC and walk around, that we're not considering that a meeting.
And I think, I mean, it's even broader, right? As long as the meeting law says, as long as we're not deliberating towards or any district policy, right? That that's not considered a meeting.
Any decision on any matter, yeah,
Yeah.
so, just like, yeah, so that's not business.
So it's funny that they specifically called that out, but
I assume that there's been some issues that have been brought up at certain places. that-
yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what happens. And then everyone gets to share in the adjustment.
And then further down in the 2A section, they just line up some extra things. Purely factual is okay. Not related to any math, yeah. So then my other question would be at the bottom of what?
The numbers are on the lower right-hand column.
Bottom of 3-4. In gray, it says in accordance with board policy KL. Would that line up with their model policy with our actual policy of KL?
Yes, it would, because that's one of the first policies I changed when I first got here, because we received so many complaints. I made that a priority. And so yes, we have the newest rendition of policy KL, but let's say I didn't.
Yeah.
And it was a three-year-old policy that they had developed maybe during the COVID years as an example. This still would tie us legally to the KL that we have on file.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how that works.
it brings up an interesting thing. So it says, please regarding public meeting law can be filed with the board in accordance with board policy KL. The board will respond and provide a copy of the complaint and response to the Oregon Government Ethics Commission within 21 days. In accordance with state law.
Mhm.
So that's a requirement.
Mhm.
Yeah, it looks like it was. Going back to the first page in the brackets, they said. Optional policy reflects public meeting laws amended by House Bill 2805. Looks like a 2023. So yeah, it looks like that's brand new.
Yes, sir.
So that KL policy, we are up to date on that.
Yes, sir.
If it's inappropriate to ask, have we done that process for a current one that has come in?
For KL,
Yeah, for
this,
the current complaint that had come in. I just didn't know. Is that not the time to talk about?
if I'm not sure which complaint, you're saying that we have an active complaint going on.
Have we had one?
I think that we have one.
Okay,
Oh, yes, the one. the
So,
first one.
But obviously,
so
I'm just curious.
yeah, no, so let me break it out for you. The most common policy we have in addressing complaints is KL.
Okay,
It comes in, I've got a complaint. From there, I don't expect you, for example, to know, maybe it's more of a sexual harassment, which then would fall under a different policy. The KL is your starting
Got
point.
it.
Okay, and then from there, we can make those decisions, or attorneys can make decisions. Oh, you should apply these 3 policies on top of KL.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked over it,
So I got to take you back though to the first page,
Okay.
because I've got bracketed language here.
yes.
And so we're going to have to make a decision unless you want me to make the decision and we can move on. I don't think that's the reason for the policy committee. So I think we probably should discuss that bracketed language that I'm talking about here.
Talking about how to give or submit public comment.
So looking at going down 1, 2, 3 paragraphs on the first page, the first couple of words is all regular,
Mhm.
special and emergency meetings. If you drop down to that bottom part of the paragraph, you've got a lot of bracketed language there. And like I said, I've got my opinions I can share with you as to why, or I can let you guys read through it and tell me what you want.
Looking at that second or number 4 footnote. Do we have the technology to do a video call? Like, what would our options be?
Well, it's electronic, and so we're meeting the protocol.
Okay,
And so, yes, so we're allowing this to happen. Sorry, right now the camera's not
Yeah.
back there anymore. The monitor is. Yeah, so we are actually meeting these requirements. And if you read through it, it also says when possible as an example. So it's not like it has to be an absolute. So for example, if our microphones go down for the next few minutes or so, if this were a regular board meeting, we've got somebody still here that can take minutes and it can continue on, because sometimes there are just glitches that happen electronically beyond our control. This allows for that flexibility. So we're okay as far as that goes.
do we have anything currently in place that addresses that public comment area or?
I don't know if we have that in place or not. I can tell you the OSBA attorneys have said coming out of COVID, and this is what this is basically about, is because we couldn't meet. And so we did electronic communications. And so they liked it so much that they said, your practice is going to be coming out that you are going to do both in person and by an electronic means as well. You're going to have to provide both. And this will also talks about too, that if you're allowing for public comment in real time, you need to do the best that you can to allow for electronic communication as well.
And yeah, I mean, it goes on to talk about emails and we've been doing that. So
Yep.
I think it'd be probably a good idea to,
So
codify that and
jump up
Exactly.
above there in that third paragraph, it has bracketed language that says for information, how to give or submit public comment. And then it has another bracket is outlined under policy BDDH, a public comment board meeting and or post on the district website. So again, I've had a little more time to kind of take a look at this as well. And then also referring to board policy BDDH, which is public comment at board meetings. And so I want to make sure that if we're implementing a new policy, that it ties to the existing policy, which is something you asked similar. And so,
Yeah.
yes, this is going to tie into that.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So
yeah, I mean, my thought would be. I don't think it hurts to add that in just to make it clear if they're here and they want to see it, that it's a quick link to that, and if they're on the district page, it's also there that.
Is the BDDH, does that have the 2-minute, 3-minute thing or?
What this is referring to in the language that we're looking at, it says to request for an item on the agenda. And that's in our language here. And that's where it says refer to BDDH. And under that, under our existing policy, it says a member of the public may request the superintendent to consider placing an item on the agenda for a regular board meeting. The request should be made in writing and presented to the superintendent for consideration at least 5 working days prior to the scheduled meeting. So that's why you've sometimes heard at board meetings and said, you know, we had some folks write into us, but they missed the timeline, they missed the deadline. This is what we were referring to.
Yeah.
So again, this is just going to lay it out a little more cleaner. I would highly recommend that we keep that. And if you look in that last part of that 3rd paragraph, it has number 4, which is footnoted down below, which you're referring to. So that's why I would say yes, that we keep that language as written. If you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trevor, any thoughts?
So we gotta take out some of those, right?
Yeah. So for information, how to give or submit public comment.
So for information how to give or submit public comment, it is outlined in board policy BDDH, public comment at board meetings. And I would suggest is
and
posted on the
posted.
website. So we would drop the or, and then you'd be fine. Okay,
Good.
got that. Which then keeps the footnote down below. And then if you go to page,
Sorry, one last thing, on the very last page there, 4-4, who's gonna be arranging the OGEC training for board members?
yeah, that's a good question because this is new.
Oh,
and
yeah.
something that we're going to have to work on. So if you're looking at the last page on this, it says that this is new mandatory training that every board member shall attend or view a training on public meeting law prepared and approved by the OGEC at least once during the board member's term of office and shall verify attendance in accordance to. And if you read the footnote below, it's for those districts that are $1 million or more in their fiscal year of expenditures. That's us. So yes, we're going to have that language. My belief would be that it would be the board secretary that would have to monitor and track and make sure that we're keeping in compliance.
Yeah, I guess, well, 2 things here. Like today, I took the mandatory annual training, which was the child abuse and the
Mandatory reporter.
yeah. So I'm wondering if that can be added to that training thing. And of course, it says at least once during the board member's term of office, which is 4 years. Obviously, you want to get that done as soon as possible. So I don't know if we want to change that to not.
It's up to you. It's bracketed language. If you wanted to beef it up, this is the minimum standard. So
My only worry would be, is it, we don't have it fully in place yet on the training being available to us? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I don't know if something's actually out there that we can take.
What if we put something like at least once during the board member's term of office as soon as practical?
Yeah,
Or something like that, because then it still is not, if it's not available, it's not like you have to do it within your first year. It's just, it's basically giving, you know, a little kick in the pants to the board member to make sure you get it done as soon as, you know, as possible. So
how about the term, and I'm using OSBA language, extent reasonably possible. I don't know if that
Maybe like
captures your,
as soon as reasonably responsible, or as soon as reasonably
Yeah.
possible.
what did you say, Scott?
To the extent reasonably possible.
yeah,
Yeah.
as soon as, or
I like the reasonably, yeah. So maybe like so during the board member's term of office, as soon as reasonably possible.
so.
Yep.
And so this is an example where I'll turn around and I'll email you and I will say to y'all, hey, this is what I've got written down. If you got questions or concerns or pushback, right back to me, not to each other.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then if you see a second edit and be like, okay. So again, we're just trying to get this solidified coming out of committee, but again, we're still not making a decision other than it's a recommendation. So we're still operating within the scope of what you're mandated as board members. On page 204, again, taking a look at bracketed language, and it looks like it's about fourth paragraph down. It starts off, if requested to do so at least, and they're suggesting 72 hours before a public meeting, the board will make reasonable effort to provide translation services. I like the language, but I also like our practice where it's still currently 5 days. Now they say this whole is bracketed language. If you want to go from 5 days down to 72 hours, 3 days, that's fine as well. But talking to the board secretary, or assistant to you guys, she would prefer to keep it as is.
With the 5 days.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I mean, we have the 48 hours for interpreter for hearing impaired persons.
Right.
I mean, do we know how often we have that requested?
We haven't had it requested in the short time I've been here.
Do we know what our capacity is to provide that? Like how,
We have to provide, and we have capacity, but this timeline, yeah, we need that heads up prior to. But yeah, we have capacity, but it's very expensive. We did have them attending meetings. Nobody was utilizing the services, and that's why we went more policy as opposed to having it standing at the ready.
You could also, another suggestion is maybe a happy medium instead of 72 hours. Maybe 3 business days versus, because then it's, a little bit shorter than the 5, but 72 hours when we meet on a Tuesday means Sunday. So that really only gives Monday to get it together,
Right.
Or Tuesday. So
is that where the 5 days comes from? It
Yeah,
would have to be
that's
done by Friday.
well, it was originally in the policy, but it's that concept. So
but if you make it business days, then if we have like an emergency meeting on a Monday, that gives more, I don't know. I think that I like the use of business days just because you all work on business days usually. So I don't want to make any extra work for employees. It doesn't need to be.
would you be okay with working days as opposed to business days?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any minimum time that we have to? Like, that's the suggested language.
It's only suggested,
Okay,
so
I just didn't know if there was like a,
it's totally in brackets. We could totally scratch this and not even have it.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think,
I mean, I like that the idea of this 72 being 3 days, but I think working days is way more fair. And it's because 5 days just seems like a long time for someone, but I mean, it's really going to work out to be about the same. But I think it's just personally.
Right here.
Yeah, well. Are we having any issues with it currently? And that's not to say that somebody doesn't request it.
No, I'm not hearing any, and you're not. So I think that answers your question.
I mean, I could go either way on it since,
I don't have a strong opinion on it either.
Right.
I just keep it as it is. It's not broken, let's not fix it. And that, I think that the district is very accommodating, so it's something that's really exceptional. You can get somebody and we would do that.
So what are you telling me?
I'm saying keep it as 5 days or just,
We good? 5 working days?
do we even need to put that in there or?
I think it would be good as
Okay,
a
'cause
guideline.
Right now, it's not explicit anywhere. That's just kind of the internal policy.
I didn't check with Tabitha if it was in our existing policy or not. I just asked her what our current practice was. So
Yeah.
she said 5 days, but we can clarify it to 5 working days. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that that's something, not everyone's gonna go on and search these policies. I think that that's something
Yeah.
that should be on the district website, like
my,
the policy on submitting.
my question would be is, would it be if it's not there where it's just dead in the water, we're not gonna try, or would it be,
Well, it would depend on your district leadership, because this district leadership as it stands right now, superintendent on down, they like the 5 days. But if they're out, someone else comes in, it's not in here, I'm not doing it.
Mhm.
So that's why, again, if you have something in practice or in writing,
yeah.
that's
Well, and yeah, I get that. My thought is like, let's say, just for example, 3 days before somebody says, hey, I wanted to do this. Is there any chance that it could happen? Is it, somebody's on, we have somebody that can do that, or is it just
We would stick to policy.
Okay.
Because as soon as you start going outside of policy, then you like them, you don't like me.
Mhm.
And you're almost creating new policy, like actual.
So we always had, so what are we talking about? When interpreters, so like somebody wants a German interpreter.
Yeah,
That
we would
kind
do
of-
the best that we could to find a German interpreter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I think the 5 makes more sense too, keeping it as is, just because I'm thinking. Like 3 days for Spanish might be easy, but what if it's
Or easier. Yeah.
easier versus like I need a Russian interpreter, like that might be more difficult, and 5 days gives us time, gives you guys plenty of time to find that.
Yeah.
Yeah, do we, is the Spanish interpreters, are we doing that anymore, or is that on request?
It's on request at this
Okay.
point, because again, it was spending a lot of money and nobody was utilizing it.
Yeah,
So
and help me understand, is there a service out there that can take the transcripts or take a video like this, convert it to transcripts and into other languages?
I think there is that
Google.
I'm told that Google, for example, with Spanish, and this is what I'm being told, I don't have a second language, but I'm being told that sometimes when they take Spanish, maybe it's language from Spain.
Mm.
And maybe it's formal language from Spain as opposed to the vernacular that we speak around here. So Google isn't the best way to do it. I'm actually hearing good things about Chat GPT. Again, I haven't used it, but that's what I'm hearing, that's much more. So I wouldn't use Google. for
Okay.
this, but yeah,
I guess my point is there's avenues now.
much more than there have been.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So jumping down to the paragraph that says special meetings can be convened. Again, there's bracketed language in there.
Yeah, what is that? A special meeting may be scheduled with less than a quorum is present at a meeting. Additional business still needs to be conducted at the pending time of a meeting. Oh,
You know,
that's so wordy. What are they getting at
the
there?
situation that they're kind of getting at here, or?
I honestly, other than just special meetings seem to be cropping up more and more, they made it a point to add this paragraph and add this new language in here. So it's like you shared earlier.
I think it's missing the word or.
Where at?
Just, I think that would make it more sense. A special meeting may be scheduled if less than a quorum is present at a meeting. Additional business still needs to be conducted at the ending time of meeting, or conducting business prior to the next regular meeting would be advantageous.
We can drop or in there if you guys are fine with that.
I think it makes the sentence make more
It
sense.
flows, yeah.
Yeah. Basically, and it's saying any one of those 3 things we could use that to trigger a special meeting.
So I'm curious. The gray is suggested language,
No,
It's added.
added language.
yes. But if it's within a bracket, we
The whole
don't have
thing
to
is-
have it.
okay.
Yeah. But if you are going to add that bracketed language, that needs to be in there.
Okay, yeah.
But I feel like if you put or, then it makes it any one of those 3 could work versus
I like
all of
it.
them.
Yeah. That was a good catch.
Spent a lot of time looking up.
So
all
what are
this.
we looking at here? You have less than a quorum, so you're not
Making
able to vote on
decisions, yeah.
anything.
But you can, it says to discuss a topic. So if we were, I don't know, 3 of us said we want to, it's not quite a quorum, but we want to have a special meeting to discuss a birthday party. I don't know what, but
Yeah.
you could throw it out there and you could have a special meeting to discuss it, not necessarily to make a meeting.
Right.
Or we finish the meeting and we're gonna make a special meeting to
Address
continue,
staff birthday parties.
right?
Yep.
Or retirement, or
Yeah.
we don't want to drag out because we're already at 10 PM and we haven't hit all our agenda items.
Right.
Or
So it's just giving you that flexibility.
conducting business, which we did this when we had to do superintendent. We did a special meeting for the
But
superintendent.
there's a
August. But yeah, that's why I'm saying. That's why if you put or, it doesn't have to be, but it's saying. If less than a quorum or any of these things.
Um,
So any one of those can be,
heard.
and that's why that grayed out language makes sense, because we had to do that in August to make sure we were in compliance with another policy. My vote's to keep it in there and add the or before conducting business.
I don't like it. I don't know. I don't understand it really. I understand that, you know, a special meeting may be scheduled if less than a quorum is present at a meeting. Okay, I agree with, okay, let's say that that's not controversial. Then additional business still needs to be conducted at the ending time of a meeting. What does that mean?
The way I look at it is like, say we've gone way over and we're at like, now we're at 10 p.m. and we still have some agenda items, rather than continue till midnight, we could say, hey, let's call a special meeting to do these last 3 agenda items. We're gonna end today. We're gonna do another meeting to finish those.
Or instead of doing it that night, you could conduct that business prior to the next regular scheduled meeting. So if we want to stay till 10 o'clock, we could come back at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
That's how I'm reading that. Or
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is,
Yep.
hey, we want to, well, let's call it tonight. We still have 3 more things. Let's do a special meeting tomorrow to finish this.
and then we'll add it to the next regular meeting.
But that's how I'm reading it is.
Okay.
I'm slightly confused as well. Like, why did they add a comma? Did it used to be a special meeting, maybe scheduled if less than a quorum is present at a meeting, additional business still? I'm confused by,
That's why I said, I think
because my first reading of it was, you can do this with a quorum, less than a quorum, if businesses still needed to be conducted at the ending of a meeting. And that business needs to be conducted prior to the next meeting. That's how I was reading it. So, or it didn't make sense that these are 3 different options for this. So I'm confused about
I'm thinking too, so say we all.
it as a
come-
list
we all-
rather than a.
So say like last week, we only, for our board meeting, only less than a quorum showed up. We could say at that point, all right, we don't have a quorum tonight. Let's do a special meeting tomorrow and have a quorum.
Sure,
So that's option A. That's all this is saying.
but it doesn't seem like when I saw it, it didn't look like a list of options. Is it supposed to be a list of options?
It's open for our interpretation.
Because then it says at least 24 hours notice must be given for any special meetings. So I'm confused at how you have a special meeting after a meeting if it hasn't been.
So maybe it's not tomorrow, but hey,
It
Thursday.
would be a couple days from now. Yeah.
No, but for the. After, like, if you're gonna have a special meeting after the board meeting, the same night. How can you do that?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think you would have to roll that out 24-hour notice. You're right. You
No,
would.
that's the way I'm reading it too. Additional business still needs to be conducted at the ending time of a meeting. Like, we have hit our ending time and we still have business to discuss. Okay, 24 hours from now, we're gonna finish that.
Yep.
Well, then in that case, there's not an or needed, because you're saying if additional business still needs to be conducted at the end of a meeting, then conducting and conducting business prior to the next meeting is advantageous.
Well, it
Like
needs to be an
you're,
or, because we did that third one. You don't want that to be an and. We did that for Dr. Phillips's setting his goals. That was a special meeting because conducting business prior to the next.
but we
regular
had a quorum, so that. Like, because above it, special meetings can be convened by the board chair upon request of 3 board members or by common consent of the board to discuss any topic. Sentence, end. That is a thing that you can do. What I read as the next is you can schedule a special meeting with less than a quorum present in this circumstance. So that meeting was a special meeting and you can do that. You can schedule that, no problem.
Would you go with an and or?
I just don't get the or, because that second additional business still needs to be conducted at the ending time of a meeting. Either that means directly after the meeting in my head, like meeting is ended, but we're gonna have a special meeting tonight to do this. It doesn't seem like that's either possible. And if that's not a possibility, then or doesn't make sense, because that means it's an option that we can't actually do.
Why I'm reading it is each of these 3 are additional reasons that we would call a special meeting. So you're saying, yeah, for 3 members, any 3 members could do it or by common consent. And then it's just basically spelling out additional reasons we would call it. If we have less than a quorum at a regular meeting.
I say we strike all that in the parentheses. I'm understanding it more now. It's 3, I think 3 reasons why you might want to do it, but then again, it could be limited, so.
Here's a question for you. Currently, could we have a special meeting with less than a quorum?
We're doing it right now.
This is a special meeting and not,
It's not necessarily a special meeting, but yeah, we could hold a special meeting without a quorum. Absolutely.
yeah, then I mean,
Well, I'm not reading it as saying that we can do a special meeting with just less than a quorum. I'm seeing it as we could, if we show up at a regular meeting, we have less than a quorum. We don't have to be like, well, we're canceled till next month. Let's do it Thursday because we
just can't take actions, right?
Right.
But the way I'm reading is that we could then also say. Well, crud, we don't have a quorum. To do all these things, let's call a special meeting for Thursday or Friday this week.
I'm with Trevor. Let's strike the whole thing because we still,
But
it's still
If we
listed.
strike all that. Then we can still do any of those three
Yeah.
these things, right?
I think that it's messy. It doesn't.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
That works for me.
Okay. So
Do you think that there's any reason why we shouldn't do what we're
I would
talking about?
voice an opinion and
Okay.
then you could tell me to kick rocks or, hey, that's a good idea or somewhere in between. So
Okay.
no, I wouldn't. Going to page 3 of 4, we have more bracketed language. And if you look at this italicized language there, it's basically saying this is going to be added to the communicate as a reminder. So I didn't know how you felt about that. That's my opinion. Is it's up to you. Typically, when I send you emails, I tell you don't hit reply all when responding to the email, but this is.
I mean, I have a county email that I have to have that at the end of, and it's just a signature line, it's not like you're typing it out every time. It just is that extra layer of security that I do my due diligence to make sure you don't
So is this thing,
mess up.
board members would have to have this in every.
You just tag it at the end.
It says up above, it says email sent to other board members, you'll have the following notice. That's how it reads to me.
The only issue is like, yeah, if it was just something we sent out on everything, but it's not sent out to everybody, it would just be if I wanted to email you.
Yep. If you're wanting to say, hey, are you getting to the board meeting at 5:55 or, then yeah, you'd have to throw that tag in.
I feel like, I just feel like it'd be easy to accidentally be out of compliance with this policy
To misstep.
if we require
You
that.
mean about putting it in your signature block?
So it's not a signature block, it's
'Cause it's-
only if we're emailing each
mean-
other.
It might be
Oh,
some
yeah,
work
yeah.
with certain people, but you can have different signatures. I get that might be too confusing. Could we change it to say email sent to the board members are suggested to have the following?
It's bracketed language. You
I
can
like
add and
suggested
change.
better.
Because I think that it's just a good idea
So how about we skip suggested? If you're looking at this, email sent to the board members may have the following this. You can have suggested. that
May
just-
or should or
Yeah,
what.
may just sounds like, could
How
I
about
not
should?
before?
What about should?
You know.
I'm thinking should
Again-
versus shall.
Yep. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know that we need it. Given what's on the last page on the training on public meetings law and.
I just feel like it's too easy to get out of compliance on this. And I'm thinking, I know I could do this, but I'm thinking
Yeah.
about future board members too, and maybe someone who isn't as tech savvy. I don't want them to be suddenly.
tripped up on it.
Tripped up on
Especially if
it.
you're brand new and
Yeah.
you don't know.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just want no more controversy. So,
Well, but the thing is, think about it. This board's really good thus far in our short time together of being very respectful and being very compliant. There are other boards out there that are not so much. And as you know, elections will come and go. And so to your point, they may or may not know, and other boards, may need more guidance or direction than this current board.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, Trey. I like just strike it.
Yeah, I think you can accomplish this through good training, which we should be doing anyhow in the onboarding process.
Yes.
So we're okay striking it. Okay. I can do that.
Yeah, as a slight suggestion, I feel like we should bring that up maybe at the work session, just talking about onboarding more so and certain little tips and tricks to help us all not slip up, but that's.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? It would be a good conversation piece, because then you bring up a general heading like that, you can ask general questions that maybe you've had as you've been here just for a couple of months, and now we're in open session. And
Yeah.
so,
Okay.
yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea to suggest.
So the next one is 4.
Yeah,